Everyone and welcome. I'm Asiye Namdar. It's another major milestone in restoring diplomatic ties between the United States and Cuba, the reopening of embassies. U.S. government sources say an announcement will be made on Wednesday. CCTV's Michael Voss joins us from Havana. Michael, this announcement has not happened yet, but highly anticipated. What are you hearing from officials there?
Well, what the Cubans are saying is that on Wednesday morning, the head of the U.S. interest section in Havana will deliver a note to the foreign ministry from U.S. President Barack Obama to Cuba's President Raul Castro, announcing that diplomatic relations have now been sorted out and can be restored, and setting a date for the reopening of the embassies. There is already a significant U.S. diplomatic presence here in Havana, based in what is called the interest section. And it's a building whose history reflects the difficult and troubled times between these two countries.
The U.S. diplomats based in Havana currently work out of what is formerly called the United States Interest Section of the Embassy of Switzerland in Cuba. It's the same building that housed the original embassy, which was officially opened in 1953, while the U.S.-friendly dictator Fulgencio Batista was in power. But after Fidel Castro's revolution overthrew Batista in 1959, relations with the United States rapidly deteriorated. The Cubans began nationalizing U.S. companies. Washington retaliated with trade sanctions, while Fidel Castro described the embassy as a den of spies. Then, in January 1961, Washington formally broke off diplomatic relations with Cuba. Its ambassador and the entire staff emptied the building and headed home.
So the next day they asked the Swiss government if it was ready to take over that responsibility, which they accepted. And so from that day on, the Swiss ambassador was the former representative of the US government in Cuba.
There was a thawing of relations under former US President Jimmy Carter, and in 1977, both sides agreed to open diplomatic missions called interest sections. But relations quickly soured again.
The area next to the U.S. interest section was renamed Anti-Imperialist Plaza and quickly became a focus for anti-American demonstrations.
This mass march in 2000 called for the return of Elian Gonzalez, the Cuban boy caught in the bitter custody battle between his father and relatives in Miami. In 2006, during the George W. Bush administration, U.S. diplomats installed an electronic billboard on the top floor that beamed out anti-Castro, pro-democracy messages. Fidel Castro reacted by building dozens of huge flagpoles to block the view. 3 years later, the Obama administration took the billboard down. Then, last December, came the historic announcement of plans to restore diplomatic relations and return the building to a proper embassy once again.
Asiye, President Obama has to give Congress 15 days' notice that he intends to upgrade this from an interest section to an embassy. So the embassies won't actually open until much later in July. But just because these two countries do restore diplomatic relations doesn't mean that they're going to have normal relations. There are a lot of outstanding issues, ranging from the U.S. trade embargo to all of the U.S. fugitives of justice who have asylum here in Cuba. These are the sorts of issues that are going to have to be sorted out once the two countries do have diplomatic relations.